I'm Noah Baerman. Hi, everybody. I am the artistic director of Resonant Motion and um, grateful to be into year 6 of our partnership with the library. Really, in a sense, year 7, because we had a little pilot program in the fall preceding our launch in the fall of 2014. So we've been doing this for a while and have really enjoyed the ability to interact with the community, for me to bring in wonderful musicians and for them to not only perform for our community, but be able to, there's the up close part, be able to interact, take questions, um, and offer questions. Essentially, I don't really know where the line ends from uh, who who is the provider and who is the recipient of whatever interchange is happening. It's just a nice organic thing. It'll be a little more apparent or delineated today because you're not all on the Zoom call with us, and you can be presenting um, your questions in the chat on Facebook, uh, on either the library's page or the Resonant Motion's page, or for those who do not have a Facebook account or would prefer not to interact that way, you can email your questions to jazzupclose, no dots or anything, at resonantmotion.org. And while you're at it, if we were in person, I would be pointing out that we have a punch bowl in the corner where you can help subsidize the series with your extra coin and or greenbacks. And so you can simulate that digitally by going to resonantmotion.org/donate. And we will assume that any donations that come in the next few hours will be specifically to support the Jazz Up Close program. We definitely could not be putting forth the Jazz Up program this year without the supporters we've got, who include Resonant Motion's donors, the Friends of the Russell Library, and also notably the Middletown Commission on the Arts, who have supported this program since its inception. So I'm going to do a few intros. I'm also going to plug, just because I'm here and you're a captive audience, that I've got a new record out, which is Resonant Motion's latest program. We've existed as an organization, as a nonprofit, since 2012, trying to help foster the connection between music and positive change. And so my latest album, or our latest album, it's me and 100 of my friends, not counting engineers and so on. It's called Love Right. It's a tribute to one of our charter team members, Claire Randall. And I'm not going to talk a lot about that because that's tangential to why we're here today. But I'd love it if you went and checked out Love Right, even if you just look down the list of personnel and bask in the collaborative nature of all the people who came together in community to um, offer tribute to Claire. And so joining us today, one of these participants, and a participant in darn near everything I've done for the last 18 years. We have Henry Lugo, the stalwart bassist, who you'll have to take my word for it for right now, but you'll see him playing bass in a little bit. We have in my upper left corner, though I'm not sure if it's translating that way to you, we have the wonderful Erica von Kleist, who's zooming in here from Whitefish, Montana. She's a Connecticut native, spent many years in New York. Wonderful musician, nonprofit director herself, the Groove Trail organization, and indeed someone who, in addition to counting her as a friend and a trusted colleague who's actually played on 2 other recordings of mine, Know Thyself and Ripples. Erica is a really good role model for how you can have a fertile career as a creative artist in something other than a metropolis. And no offense to Whitefish, of course. And I think it's something that a lot of people are being forced into having to navigate now, and Erica's ahead of that curve. So if anyone in the audience wants to pick her brain about that, she's been very forthright about that. And last but certainly not least, the true Renaissance man on the call, no offense, Henry or me, the actor, percussionist, tap dancer, and all-around charming gent, DeWitt Fleming Jr., and who's zooming in from New York. And we're really excited to have these folks here. The theme of this year, we've had a different theme for each year of Jazz Up Close, and the theme for this year, which was put in place before pandemic life and seems extra appropriate now, is layers of collaboration. So we've been looking at partnerships that either co-lead ensembles and or where the members participate in one another's projects. And then there is the added layer of them collaborating with me and Henry, which you'll get to check out in a little bit. Do you guys want me to go straight to the first video of your wonderful sax and taps project, or do you want to give a little intro to it first?
I think let's just sort of dive right in and hear some music, and we can kind of go from there.
Sounds good. Okay, so this is a sort of, I don't want to say a highlight reel because that suggests that it's not nonstop highlights for the entire live record you did at Dizzy's Club, but this is a little sampler platter of stuff from their performance at Dizzy's Club in New York, which provided the musical basis for their Intersplosion album, which you should check out as soon as you're done paying attention to them in real time now. And so here we go.
Partner in crime on this awesome project, DeWitt Fleming Jr.
And none other than the one and only Miss Erica Von Kleist.
Okay. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about how this project came to be?
Sure, yes.
Is that too lame a question to start with? Should I ask something more philosophically highfalutin?
No, it's
we'll get
good.
there.
It's good. So I guess I'll break into it because DeWitt and I actually met in Montana, here in Whitefish. There's an amazing theater company here called Alpine Theater Project, that brings wonderful talent from New York, LA, all over the place to Whitefish, Montana to do various types of shows, whether it's sort of Broadway repertory theater or unique stuff or a Christmas show. And DeWitt is one of the artists that Betsy Morrison brought out here in 2017, right, DeWitt?
Yep, 2017.
Yeah. And I remember we were at the sort of meet and greet at the Whitefish Lake Lodge, and we're talking, and we realized that, oh man, we know all these people, the same people in New York, and I think DeWitt and I actually did a gig together with Max Pollack, great tap dancer, in like 2002, like way back in the day. And then, you know, the summer rehearsals were taking over, and we realized, man, we really got to play together. So we ended up going into the studio and doing a demo reel here in Whitefish with the great engineer Toby Scott, and it kind of grew from there. I mean, yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because you know, you're in a rehearsal and you're in a show with someone, and you're usually off to the side, like practicing on stage for tech or something like that, and you kind of hear something that catches your ear, and you're like, and then you look over, and then they hear you, and then you kind of get like, okay. So you kind of give like a, you know, okay, I hear you. And then it's just like we started talking from there. And like Erica said, we just said, let's go in the studio and let's just see what happens. And it was just great because it's one of those things where the best music happens when you don't have to say anything, where you just kind of play and it just happens. And so that's kind of what happened with Erica. And we were like, okay, we got to work together. It's just like we have an understanding that, you know, we don't even have to talk about. We don't have to say some things sometimes. We just go. And at first it was kind of nerve wracking because it was just like, you're just like, okay, let's go. And then you're just like, okay. And then you go, and then it's just like, oh, all right, cool. All right. So yeah, we got it. We just go. That's what we're doing. Okay, let's go. So it was cool.
Well, so I'm curious then how, I probably will ask this question more than once in different forms, but how much, or can you characterize whatever non-intuitive stuff goes into it, which is to say how you actually do discuss what you're going to do on a project or a performance or an arrangement of a tune, or how you delegate who takes care of what part of that decision-making process, when it's something that requires more planning than just jamming together on a tune you both know. How do you, and you can answer that from any angle you want in terms of the mundane aspects of I decide this thing and I let my partner decide this other thing, or more, you can answer it more holistically in terms of how you navigate your artistic visions and personalities when you're trying to co-create something.
You know, DeWitt and I are both business-minded people. I mean, DeWitt has his own tap mics, Do It Right tap mics, and you can see his hat in the corner. See, he's a businessman. He's got it in the corner right there. You're way ahead of me, DeWitt. I gotta get my own hat. And he and I are very business-minded, so we're very methodical and organized about, like, we have a goal, we have a dream, we want it to come to fruition, and so we work really well to that in that respect. I think having two people who are very business-minded really helps, especially when we're living 2,000 miles away from each other. We have to be very efficient with our time, especially when we were developing our album, Intersplosion. We're like, okay, we literally have 2 days of rehearsal and one shot to record this. How do we get all these ducks in a row to make this happen? I think DeWitt and I really work well to that end.
Yeah, and it's just funny because also creatively, it's like I'm a rhythm guy. I'm all about rhythm, and you know, as you guys probably see, I'll just throw out crazy ideas and crazy things. And, you know, Erica is the one to kind of like bring it together with the melody and you know, kind of get more of a structure to things. Because sometimes I'm too organic. I'm too like, let's do this because it sounds like this and boom. And then Erica's like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But, you know, let's bring it together. So it's like, it's great because a lot of times I'll just have stuff in my head floating around. I'll be like, Erica, and I'll call her and I'll talk to her about it. And, I could tell when she's just like, okay, okay. She'll kind of reel me in. And then, from there we bounce like stuff off of each other. But it's really cool because it's not forced. And I never feel like, one, my voice isn't heard, or that, I have to try to overcompensate and try to be like, well, I got to do this and I have to do that. I think we have a really good balance where we both respect each other as an artist and we respect each other's opinion. So, we feel comfortable saying, no, I don't like that, or that's great, or, maybe we should try this. And it's never an issue because, at the end of the day, it's about the music. And then also we developed such a great relationship with each other where, I never get offended if she's told me before, that kind of sucks. That really, I don't like, and it's not,
it sucks.
No, you never said it sucks. You never said it sucks. She's never said that, but we do have that relationship where it's just like, cause I'll throw some stupid ideas out there. Sometimes it's just, off the cuff. And so, it's nice having that relationship where we can just be candid with each other and it's all fun,
Yeah. I agree. I think that candor is important, and it also keeps the ideas fresh. It keeps them real, and it keeps the humor happening on stage and in our projects too. So if we can be absolutely candid and completely open and honest with each other, that's how we're going to be with our audience as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, do you have any, can you maybe talk a little bit about the other, we'll see them again in a subsequent clip, but the other musicians who performed on Intersplosion, who we saw momentarily in that video, and this, I hopefully, I don't know if this is a question that you want to tackle, but did you write to that band to an extent, or conceive things to those three collaborators versus having the tunes and trusting that anybody of that level of ability would deliver what you needed, and those were the folks who happened to do so on that occasion? I guess I don't have a sense of how often you've even performed this music with a full quintet like that.
Well, I think the creation of the band I deferred to DeWitt on, because he's in the rhythm section, and when as someone who's on that side of things, you have the people that you gel with differently than a horn player does. There's a different sense of I don't know, a synthesis happening. It's not like I don't know what that is, but it's different, and I wanted DeWitt, regardless of what we wrote, to feel like it was like these were the people he was in sync with rhythmically. We threw out a bunch of names. I play with such amazing people, but I wanted DeWitt to be the most comfortable with that because he's tapping through the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's a big thing because a lot of people, I've had I've danced with so many different jazz musicians, and a lot of times they don't truly understand the synergy between tap dance and jazz until you get up there and show them. And and I always get on my fellow tap dancers. I'm like, you guys, if you're going to step into an arena like jazz, or you want to get on stage with musicians, you need to learn the art form, and you have to be as respectful of the music as you want them to be of the dance. And so a lot of times, rightfully so, sometimes I find musicians are sometimes hesitant with tap dancers, only because they might see it as just as a spectacle, so it's just like, okay, all right, we're going to play the tune, and then the tap dance is going to dance. Okay, that's cool. All right, then we get back to the tune. And so I've been able to develop relationships with different musicians who understand that, I started off as a drummer. I was in a jazz band when I was in junior high school.
Here's your reminder.
And of course, there's reminder from sorry. And there she goes again. So yeah, I started playing jazz band when I was like 12 years old, and so my approach always, with everything I do, has kind of that thing with it. And so, getting to the band, Mark Meadows, I met down in DC doing Jelly's Last Jam at the Signature Theater. And what I loved about Mark is that he gives you everything. He gives you everything that he has, and he's so respectful and open to whatever it is. He's just such a open person, where it's just like you can tell him anything, even if he doesn't understand, he doesn't get it, he jumps right in and tries it. And it's just like, he's just a great person. And just like, Erica and I, he's very business minded, and he understands, and he's a very giving and what's the word? He's just a nice person. He's just a nice person.
He's
and
fantastic.
He's fantastic. And he's about the humanity of the music and not the intellect of the music. You know what I mean? A lot of times that can be a little overwhelming sometimes. And so I met him down in DC, and we just gelled as soon as I met him. So I knew he was perfect for this, especially with the time crunch, because I knew we were going to be throwing this information at people quick. And so it's like, who can pick it up quick, but then who also is going to be able to expand on it with whatever they have to bring to the table, and not, kind of look at you sideways for 30 minutes because, they're like, what are you trying to do? So it's that whole thing. So, and then India Owens, I met her through Bobby Sanabria. So Bobby was teaching up at, I think he still teaches up there at, what's that music school up there, uptown?
School.
Yeah, Manhattan School of Music, right. So India was going to Manhattan School of Music. This was years ago. And I came up to visit Bobby, and I was sitting in on one of their rehearsals with the school, and it was her playing bass, and it was the Yankee legend. What is his name?
Bernie Williams.
Bernie Williams. Okay. So it was Bernie Williams and India sitting there, and she was burning them. She was burning it. India was young, and she was just getting in, and I was like, who is this? Like, I was like, man, this girl is just bad. And she was just such a nice person. She was just so nice, and she was from Detroit. So I know she had that like kind of like gritty funk bottom, and just that funk that was already in her. And so I met her, and then we ended up playing on different gigs with different people. And like I said, she was just so nice and so open and so, receptive and willing to just be present and, be about the music. So she was great. CV, Carol DeShield III, I met him. I was helping doing the show down in DC again. And I saw him playing with Mark. And I saw them first playing at a jazz band, and he was just killing. He was just on his kind of Jeff Tain Watts that night. He was just like, just going in. And I was like, Jesus, this guy is crazy. And then I was like, that's cool. I would love to work with him. And then he was playing drums for Ain't Misbehaving, which is a musical. And that's when I really had an even deeper respect for him, because I saw him in a different atmosphere where he completely removed himself and was dedicated and was all about whatever those actors needed on stage, the singers needed, the director, the musical director, and whatever the music was about. And I saw him play in a completely different way than I saw him the first time. And I was just like, wow. Like it was all about the music. It wasn't about him and his ability. He was able to take that music and like I said, whatever anybody needed, and he adapted so well, you would have thought it was a completely different drummer than when I saw the first time. And so I was so amazed by that. And again, he was such a nice person. He was so nice. And so it was just a no-brainer to contact them, and thankfully they were available. And that was long-winded, but I felt the need to give them their due shine, because they are amazing musicians and human beings.
Thank you. Thank you, DeWitt. And if any of my students are listening right now, note the common thread of being a good person, being to your advantage from an employment standpoint. That's all I'll say about that for now. We might go back to that, though. But I want to play one of the videos that we made together. DeWitt and Erica co-composed 2 brand new tunes that Henry and I had the privilege of collaborating from a socially and geographically distanced standpoint on. And which one do you want to do first? Do you care? Okay.
No.
Let's do. So this is a tune of theirs called Mask Party. And I want to also give a shout out to Josh Kwassman of SquarEast Productions, who did both the audio mixing and the video editing on this. Josh is a core member of Team Resonant Motion, and we are extraordinarily grateful. If you've ever seen any of the post Jazz Up Close video archives of that, he edits and mixes all of that, but it's been a different kind of task this year. So, and he has been more than up to it. So this is Mask Party by DeWitt and Erica.
crowd goes wild.
So can I ask in real practical terms, and you can say, you know, this is like proprietary information, none of your business, but when you guys wrote this tune during the pandemic, so obviously without being able to be in the same physical space working out the ideas and so on, how did you go about whatever kind of video conferencing or piggybacking and sending ideas back and forth? How did this become the coherent tune that it ultimately became?
So here's sort of an analogy on how DeWitt and I write together. So it's like, you know, you go to someone's house and you're really hungry and you're like, hey, let's cook some dinner. And you're like, okay, I know how to cook. And you go in your friend's refrigerator and they've got like a handful of different ingredients. And they put it on the counter and they're like, make something with this. And then you start cooking and you start, you know, you make chopping up stuff and like adding cheese and butter or whatever else. And then you have your friend taste it. Your friend's like, hey, that's in the right direction, but add this and that. So then you start doing this and then they start adding stuff and then they make a salad and then all of a sudden you have a big meal. That's kind of how we write together. DeWitt shares snippets of ideas over his voice memos and like, oh, check out this idea, check out this one. And you know, he's the rhythm master. I've got the chords and harmony down. So like between the two, we come up with these ideas and then we sit and talk about song form. And then after we know it, we have a song. It's kind of how it goes. And it's fun for me because I like that kind of writing. I like having an idea and then someone else's idea even, yeah. And then making it into something. And then I have the luck, the fortune of being able to hand it back to the person who wrote it, and like we can write it together and finish it together. So it's very collaborative.
Yeah, for me it's great because, you know, I like rhythms and bass lines I can kind of come up with, and they're fun for me. I mean, but when it comes to melody and all that stuff and the chord progression and all that, I'm just like, I'm not great at that, you know. And so it's so fun for me to have an idea to be able to throw at Erica, and then she just comes up with some bad changes and some melodies, and I'm just like, yes, you know. So it's yeah, like, you know, Erica said, it's just, that was a great analogy. It's just everybody's bringing different ingredients, and, you know, all of a sudden we got a great meal. And this song in particular was like, it's so funny because this one kind of reminds me of the process we had with what is the one, Erica? Remember where I was sending you the rhythm and we were hearing the ones in different places?
I know the name. Why are we spacing on the name of
this is our album. We don't even This is terrible.
Okay, pandemic brain. It's
right. It's real. But it's the one about, you know, the rabbi going down to march with Dr. King. That's Imperfect Fit. Yes. Oh man, brain, wake up. So this one is just like, cause like I'll hear something one way, I'll send it to Erica, she hears it another way, and she will expound on it in the way that she hears it and send it back to me. And I'll be like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And then we'll end up meeting in the middle somewhere, and it's just crazy. So to do this like with you guys, who I'm sure had your different, you know, kind of way you heard the rhythm, it was really interesting to work with you guys on this and hear like different takes of where you guys felt the groove or the clave or where you felt like it was sitting, and then to like kind of play. It was really cool to kind of, you know, to hear it and to be able to work off of it, because every time you guys would send the track back, you know, I was like, oh, okay. Oh, I see. And then I would have to, you know, adjust how I would approach it, which was really interesting and fun for me.
It's kind of the way it goes these days with creating music over the internet with other people, and you're not in the same room. And especially like, you know, bass and piano, it's like most of the rhythm section. So it's really tough. I mean, how did you feel about that process with a song like that can kind of go either way?
Yeah, I don't know. There were a couple of moments I was going to say where I perceive things incorrectly, because and especially when I get the tunes, it's really just barely a skeleton, you know. And I'm like, okay, what can I lay down that's going to benefit the tune? So I have to have a really good idea for, you know, kind of what you guys are looking for to hopefully deliver what it is going to help the tune come to life. So it was really, I guess it goes to show you how important it is to have people who fill in all those different skill sets. So, you know, like Erica might know how to put stuff down on paper in a clearer way so that you can put it in an email and send it to, you know, the player or the pianist, but you come up with the ideas, and, you know, I don't know, it's everyone, you know, all the hands washing the other hands, you know, it all comes together. But there were a couple of moments where I was like, oh wow, that's not at all what they were looking for. I'm like, I got to throw all this out now, you know. But it was such a cool challenge. I welcome it. But yeah, I don't know if Noah has anything to add to that. But yeah.
Me, anything to add? Aside from the fact that, as many people watching this probably know, I love cooking analogies when we're talking about music. So thank you. I feel less alone now. I think related to that, there's this this balance that anybody in a collaborative situation, well, anybody who's entering in good faith into a collaborative situation navigates. And you talked about this a bit, DeWitt, and talking about the Mark and Carol, especially their ability to adapt to different situations. And there's this hard to define balance of bringing the music what it needs and bringing yourself into it, so that it's not just generic, hopefully competent practitioner of this instrument laying down a hopefully acceptable part, but there's actually something where it's like this, you know, this could only be this person, and yet it's also fulfilling all of the obligations attached with just playing the song correctly. And and I think with this tune more than the other one, I had to make sure I was hearing the pocket where it would lay right. And for those who didn't catch the last one of these and or are not familiar with how music can be recorded in a distanced way like this, what happened here is we started off with a demo that Erica made that provided reference, and we had music, sort of a sketch, essentially, what's called a lead sheet, and with the basic information of the tune. And we had this demo that provided essential reference for just getting through the tune. And then we recorded one part at a time. And so unlike typically when this happens, those of you who are veterans of the Jazz Up Close series, the band gets together the morning of the performance or the afternoon of the performance, and we spend, assuming traffic isn't too bad, we spend an hour and a half running through the music we're going to play that day, having never played it together before, but with Henry and me having absorbed it and learned the music. And there's this very all at once process of hearing it come together. And sometimes it's more dramatic than other times. Like sometimes it's music that's from a record, and so Henry and I have that point of reference of like, try not to sound too much worse than whoever played bass and piano on the record, and this is essentially the conception of the song. And but in this case we didn't have that, so rather than there being this all at once, okay, here's where it comes together, which I imagine was what it was like when you were rehearsing the tunes from your record with the band in this rapid fire rehearsal process. Here we were hearing one layer at a time, and it's sort of like, I don't know, I think about like a picture where the colors reveal themselves one at a time, and you get a more and more complete or vivid view of what's happening. And sometimes that was like, okay, yeah, this is getting hipper and hipper. And there are other times where that may have been also true, but it's like, oh wait, I was going in this direction, but now that makes less sense. Henry alluded to this. That makes less sense based on this additional layer that's been added. And now maybe what I was doing before was acceptable, but it would groove better if I adjusted this thing. And one of the things and tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but one of the things I enjoyed about hearing you, Erica and DeWitt, talk just now about the process of writing together is it seemed to be a fairly egoless thing. Like, I don't get the impression that either of you is going off into a corner to sulk if your conception of how it was going to go isn't exactly how it turns out, because you're sort of humbling yourself at the face of what other ideas have been presented. It seems to not be based on a really rigid agenda, which of course collaboration is hard to do in a really interactive and genuine way if you're not open to things that you didn't plan for happening. But are there moments, you can elude this one, but are there moments where the compromises are hard, either in this relationship or in other collaborations that you don't have to name, with people, where you're like, okay, you know what, fine, you win, the tune is going to be like this, and I'll just suck it up and perform it like that, and see inside about how much better it would have been if it had gone my way?
Yeah, I think it's important that, especially in this day and age, given everything we're going through, rigidity is not the name of the game. There are times as a composer and as a leader when you want things a certain way and you hold to that. But in this particular world we're in, and especially like when you are given the gift of still being able to collaborate with great musicians like you and Henry, it's like, you both, we know you have so much to add to what we've written. I mean, I feel like DeWitt and I write a song and then we hand it over to the musicians who are gonna complete it with us. I mean, yeah, it's our tune, but everything you add in terms of groove and feel and just the building of the song, I mean, that's how it goes in the jazz world. I mean, there's no rigidity there. It's going to be what it's going to be, and that's the most beautiful part of the process in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think our album wouldn't be as good as it is if we didn't allow for the musicians to, take that and interpretate it and expand on it. I can understand if we had like a 15-piece orchestra and then okay, you got to need to follow the sheet, but I mean, and like Erica said, what you guys did with what we wrote is just, it was great. And like I said, it was so interesting to hear your interpretation. So, Henry, you weren't wrong at all. Like, whatever you were feeling, that's what it is. And it was great because it made me look at stuff different. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't think of it that way. And then the song developed the way it should have developed, Same thing happened with Imperfect Fit, because I did the same thing. Erica and I did the same thing with a demo. Like, Erica recorded everything and then I recorded drums on it. And what Carol came up with was way better than what I came up with, and it was.
And then India had the bass line. She kept feeling on the other side of the beat.
Oh man!
So she ended up. Yeah. We ended up playing into that, and I was like, we never would have heard it that way had she not decided to make the mistake of doing that. And in those instances, it's not a mistake. It's part of the music.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Erica, I know, enjoys it. So we love it. We love it.
Additionally, in that tune that we just did, if I remember correctly, I had a track to play along with that was Erica and DeWitt on one track, and then I had Noah on a second track. So I had like two piano parts and the tap I could listen to all at the same time, but I had to make the decision, okay, which one am I actually going to listen to while I'm recording? And the track with Erica and DeWitt had more information for me, but leaving Noah's piano part playing while that was playing was almost impossible to record. So I had to like do a couple of passes, just playing with Noah's part. I'm like, okay, ultimately this is probably what's going to be happening on the track. But when I went to record it, I played along with what Erica and DeWitt had sent, because it had more information, although it was not the actual information. You know what I mean? It was such a strange. It's such an interesting, I shouldn't say strange, interesting way to collaborate, because I'm collaborating with you guys, but you're not talking to me. Like, you're just like, hey, here's some music, have at it. I'm not talking to you today because you owe me $10 or whatever. Yeah. So it was a neat, really cool challenge. This is a really cool project.
About
think it
that
came out
$10, by
great.
the way. Oh, go ahead, Erica.
I just think it came out so great, and you don't hear the final product until you hear the final product. And we could have started recording this months ago and like done take after take. Okay, we redo this and that. And it's like, but no, I mean, there's no point at which it's going to be perfect in what was in your brain. And if once you release yourself from that rigidity, great music can happen. So I'm really happy with how it came out.
I'm glad. I think it's worth noting too that part of that is the spirit. I mean, I don't want to like wax poetic about the spirit of jazz, but even on certain, I mean, all of that is true, but on a more mundane level, if you're choosing to play something that you identify as jazz, chances are hopefully pretty good that you are hungry for surprises and you're hungry for contributions from other musicians that bring something that you weren't expecting and so on. There are plenty of forms of music, whether it's playing um, European art music or whether it's playing in an 80s cover band where like you have to play the Toto keyboard part exactly the way it was on the record or whatever. There are plenty of opportunities to play music that has to be a certain way or it's wrong, and the judge from Kyrgyzstan is going to mark you down half a point for not landing the triple axel. There are lots of opportunities for that, whereas if you're playing jazz, I mean, it's not the only reason, but one of the reasons that I would venture to say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that we all got into this is for those moments where it's like, oh, that's not what I was expecting to happen. And sometimes it's way better than what we were expecting to happen. And sometimes it's not. And sometimes it's just different and it's opening up a new realm. But on some level, that hunger for unexpected experiences and for the collaborative experience of sharing those developmental moments is one of the main things that makes it special to play this music. I know that whenever I am too rigid as a band leader or a composer about, I'm really careful to say, I mean, sometimes it's like, no, I wrote it this way because these are the notes. But I try to be really judicious about that, because once you send someone the message of, no, I'm looking for you to play what's on this page, not whatever you're feeling, then, I mean, it's just like having a conversation where someone clearly doesn't want to hear your thoughts about a subject. And of course you withdraw and you just do the bare minimum to get through that situation, and you're not open in the same way.
Yeah, I agree. It's, keeping that openness of communication means the vibes are there.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing that that always sticks out in my mind, and that helps give me validity in the way I hear things and the way I approach things. Both Eric and I have worked with Wynton Marsalis for years, and has been a mentor to us, and has gave me my first big performance opportunity in New York, in the jazz scene. And I remember being in rehearsal, and I had this part where it was a kind of a tap breaks. And at the end of the tap break, they would come back in, it would tacit, it would just be open for, however long. And then, I would have to cue the band back in. But the time was still kind of kept. And no, lies. There was I'm lying. There was a certain amount of time. It wasn't just open-ended. It was a certain amount of time. And basically what happened is when the band cut out, and let's say I had 16 bars or something like that, I would do this stuff that was kind of like, it was just like this pattern that was just very subdivided and did all these different things. And I remember somebody in the band, they couldn't catch on to where to pick back. It kept missing the one to come back in. And I remember one of the members in the band was like, well, maybe, on that last bar, if you can just keep it more straight and go. And then went and said, no, man, what are you talking about? This is jazz. And then it just stuck out. And I was like, oh, because my first instinct was like, okay, yeah, sure. That first bar, that last bar, I'll keep it straight. That way, we come back on the one clean. And then went and just before I can even answer, went and shut it down and was just like, no, this is jazz. And that's always stuck in my head. you know, even when dealing with different artists, just like I'm not going to tell you or force, you know, my idea of what I think you should do to help me be better. You know, I need to be better. You know, we're in this world, you know, creating and collaborating. So, you know, if I can't catch on to the one and we're in the same time, then that's something I need to work on. So that's just, you know, it's always stuck out in my head.
Yeah, I'll say for me, the democratic part of being a jazz musician, even before I got into jazz, I think that's what drew me to it. Because as a young kid learning, I'd say my first couple of years, I just played, you know, like rock stuff, and that really got me excited about like how the bass functioned in the band. I loved like just locking into a groove or whatever. But I remember getting some of, I think it was like the first Guns N' Roses album, the entire book of all the bass parts, right? So, and I get it, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, cool, I'm gonna learn Sweet Child of Mine or whatever. And it would get to the guitar solo, and it would be like 4 bars, and it would say, play 24 times. And I'd be like, I'm not playing that 24 times. Like, I gotta find something that lets me talk like, you know, just, so I remember that being a really defining moment. And, you know, by the time I was 15 or whatever, I started getting more into music where I got to interject, even though it was somebody's solo. I got to interact and interject, and that was, you know, so that was that. I'll never forget that moment, seeing that number like 24 times. I'm like, yeah. So
If it was 22, then you could probably suck it up. But
the
at
road,
a certain point, enough is enough.
something.
Well, I'm going to play another video. Before we do that, I will remind you that if you have questions, you can put them in the chat on the Resonant Motion or Russell Library Facebook stream of this. You can also email your questions to jazzupclose@resonantmotion.org. And we're going to play, I'm thinking, well, how do you guys feel about Be Nice? Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to give a little setup to this before I play it?
Sure. So I actually wrote another song that has words, and it has the same chord progression as this song. And I love the chord progression of that other song that I wrote that has words. That's actually in my one-woman comedy show. But I was like, I wish, you know, for one-woman comedy show, I can't have there's no rhythm section or horn section on this. So why don't I take the same chord progression that I wrote and make it another song? And so that's where this song came from. It's just funky. It's just meant to be funky. And it had another name that isn't quite as PC, so we changed the name to Be Nice. I didn't want to change the name, but DeWitt was like, we should change the name for jazz education purposes.
Okay, right on. And this is from their, this is the live performance at Dizzy's Club, as represented on your Intersplosion album. All right, so without any further ado, here is Be Nice, which is a lovely sentiment and one that it's not the first time we've gotten there today. Woo! Okay, that was nice. So, are you ready for a challenging question? Okay. So there's been some action on the feed here around the question of like being nice and working with musicians who are nice. Let's say we're defining nice as like kind, good-hearted, etc. So, what do you do when you're having to make music with people who aren't? And or is that something you can easily abide, or do you find yourself really prioritizing that to a degree similar to how you prioritize the musicianship of the collaborators? Go ahead, do it.
I have a technique I like to call the reverse bully. So it's the same. It's similar to bullying, but it's in a nice way. So I try to overpower you with kindness and just a smile and positive energy. And if that doesn't work, I walk away and then try it again. Most time it works because I've realized a lot of times people might just be in a bad mood, or in New York everybody's rushing, or something happened right before they came into a rehearsal or right before they came to the gig. 9 times out of 10, something just happened before they walked in the door. So I try to keep that into consideration. But a lot of times, if I'm in that environment, I've noticed that if I just throw so much positive energy and, smiling at them constantly, it's going to be hard for that person not to either return the smile or somehow, start to feel better about, the environment that they're in. So I call that the reverse bullying.
I like that.
I think I've learned a lot from you, DeWitt, about positivity. Um, you know, I just have seen you be positive despite anything, and like I can kind of get a little in my head sometimes and a little like impatient on the bandstand, especially rehearsing for things, because I really want them to be Noah, shut up. I can't talk when you play piano like that. I'm just kidding. No, I can get really impatient because I just get really like intense and passionate about it. And like working with DeWitt, like he is just chill and positive and always has an objective filter on everything. And I've learned a lot from you, DeWitt, into that respect. And when I lived in New York, especially in my last couple of years there, I was so dark. I was like a shell of a person. I was not a happy person. And I'm sure that there were some times on the bandstand or in rehearsals where my colleagues felt that. And I know the other side of things. I know what it's like to bring sometimes a little bit of negative energy to the bandstand. And people have reasons for it, but at the end of the day, there's no excuse. And for me, getting away from the city and cleansing my aura here in Montana for years has made me see more beauty in situations, has made me see more humor, and has helped me breathe more as a professional in these types of situations where in the past maybe I would have been beside myself with frustration for whatever reason. So running in the theme of be nice and be easy to work with, it's not only great for your career and getting called for gigs, but it's also most importantly way more important for yourself and your soul and your internal juju, to cleanse your energy. Whatever you got to do to keep that positivity happening no matter what is really important. And do some gigs with DeWitt. He'll rub off on you.
Well, so I guess I have a variation on that question. And I tell me if this is a presumptuous question, but both of you in different ways have experienced being outsiders in a way that can also not help the mood of being open and engaged. For the people a bit removed from the jazz scene, the term vibe, used as a verb, to vibe, suggests that you are projecting an attitude of condescension and negativity towards someone. And maybe you've been immune to this, DeWitt, but I know tappers who I know who have worked with jazz musicians sometimes get vibed in the sense that like musicians are apt to look down on singers, or they're apt to look down on people who they view as being not entirely musicians, so to speak. And I know, Erica, you've been really eloquent and outspoken about some of your experiences as a female instrumentalist on the scene. So I guess a variation on that, how maybe I'm gonna frame it as what advice might you give others in your position, having gone through those sorts of pitfalls, for how to turn those situations around and stay sane and spiritually whole through the process?
For me, it's I try my best not to enter any situation where I'm going to be performing or collaborating with someone without giving them the respect of understanding what they do. And I think a lot of times that's where we fall short. And I'll speak from dancers' perspective. I'll say it again, I tell dancers all the time, you can't walk into a jazz gig and not know anything about jazz, not know anything about the musicians, the music, and what it is that they're doing. I mean, these people, these musicians have put in so much time, so many years, just as many years as you put in to dancing and developing your craft. They've done the same thing. So it's kind of disrespectful for you to come in here and not respect what they have done and what they have worked so hard for. And I understand, I won't say who the person was, but I did a jazz festival, and this is a big name jazz musician, and I'm sitting in the audience waiting for my tech time. And they got through everybody's tech, and I'm just like, are they gonna take me? And then finally the guy's like, okay, all right, well, we're gonna wrap up. And then the stage manager says, oh, wait a minute, we still have DeWitt. You gotta tech with the tap dancer. He didn't realize that I was sitting in the audience. He thought that I was maybe backstage somewhere. So he's like, oh, here we go, tap dancer coming to upstage everybody. And then I was just like, oh. And in that moment, and I didn't feel like, I wasn't offended and I didn't feel upset. At that moment, I almost felt bad for him, because I didn't want to come in there and take anybody's shine or take the spotlight off of, somebody that's worked hard for something, that they've done. So I kind of felt bad in a way. So I felt like, okay, let me make sure that they understand that I'm working with them and not just trying to get up there and show off and take the energy or take the focus off what they're doing. And so that was kind of my approach, to be a part of what's going on instead of thinking that I am the feature or I am the focal point of whatever is happening. And it ended up being really good. And, he ended up really respecting me as an artist, as a dancer, and as a musician. And we had a great time. And it was about our collaboration and not, about somebody coming up there to, be featured. So, I mean, that's how I've overcome things. Just being conscious and considerate of people's time, their hard work, and what they've done. So, I mean, that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to elaborate, for anyone who's going into a situation where you're kind of rolling your eyes and being like, okay, I got to do this gig. I'm not in a great mood. I don't want to be here. The travel was really bad. My flight was late. I didn't get to take a nap before sound check, whatever. Just look at every experience as an opportunity to learn something, whether or not it's music related. Maybe you meet someone who's sitting in the audience. Maybe you meet an intern who's young and needs some advice and looks up to you as a professional, and you're able to impart some information to them, or the person you're sitting next to, you've never played music with that person, and they start telling you a story about how they used to play with Tito Puente or something, and you realize, oh my gosh, this is so cool. and it has nothing to do necessarily with the music at hand, but you've learned something and you've made a connection and you've had an experience. I mean, that's what really life is about, is a series of experiences. And I think if you keep that perspective and keep that positive energy there, you'll be open to so much more that's happening.
Okay. And also don't vibe anybody. And if you get
Nice.
vibed, then but yeah, I appreciate the idea of not letting that get to you. It's we could probably, many of us could learn something from that notion. I'm going to play, we've got a couple more music clips. I'm going to play another one that the four of us did together. Again, I don't want to suggest equal ground because Erica and DeWitt composed the tune. Henry and I just did our little thing to try to help illuminate it. But do you want to do any kind of intro to this one, or should we just play it and
Go for it.
play it first and talk later?
Yeah.
Tell you what it is later.
sometimes
job,
it's
y'all.
nice to just like jam on something. You know what I mean? It's like a palate cleanser in a way. You just like, let's just open it up and have some fun. And Josh did such a great job editing these videos. I gotta hand it to him. Really, really fun and creative.
Yeah, they came out fun. Yeah.
So great.
Yeah, no, he's something. Um, and well, and yeah, I mean, I guess so many of us are hungry now for ways to be in community, making art together. And I mean, I was joking with Henry this morning about how one of the most disorienting things about doing it this way is that every jazz up close part of it is that after we're done rehearsing and before the actual event begins, I feed the band and I cook for them, and so some of you who are jazz up close veteran attendees are familiar with the image of walking into the Hubbard room at the library while you see us standing in the kitchen with a plate of like quinoa and lentils or something, and so just not being able to engage in that sort of shared fellowship is challenging. So rain check. I'm gonna feed you guys when this is all over, um, but we're figuring it out, and I suppose. I mean, I don't know. I hope I'm not overstepping by suggesting that this is part of being a jazz musician is figuring out how to make something in whatever situation you're in. And,
Yeah, doing what you normally do in environment, staying flexible, and figuring out, okay, well, I can't do it the way I used to do it, so how can I still do it? I teach middle school orchestra too, so this morning I was editing audio that had all my students record remotely because we're not in class together. So I taught them how to use a website and record themselves and upload the audio. And now I've got heaps of audio of middle school violins and violas and cellos and double basses. And I'm trying to make some kind of recording because we're not going to have a concert. So how can we keep our thinking limber and still do something kind of together, even though it's not as together as it normally is, still creating that sense of unity for those kids and for the four of us creating the unity of a quartet, even though we're not in the same room. So yeah, I don't know. I think I learned a lot of that improvising as a musician, like keeping my thinking loose about what success will look like in a new environment.
thank you, Henry. Well, and ultimately, I feel like there's we can put that forth as like a philosophical thing, like it is, or a moral thing, like being flexible is a virtue, but it's ultimately from an entirely self-serving perspective. It just in circumstances you didn't plan for, it makes things a lot easier when you're not clinging to the way you expected things to be and they aren't, and you can actually be in the moment of what they are. I remember being illuminated by a pianist who I knew in school who was a really, really strong player. And but I would notice him like get into a thing, like, and it was maybe a thing inspired by others in the band, but he'd get so deep into the thing that he wouldn't notice that the music moved in a different direction. And it wound up being kind of a drag for everybody because he was like pulling everybody back to where it was 30 seconds ago, a minute ago, rather than following the potentially beautiful path that it might have gone on. And what I started to notice, we alluded to this earlier, is that people tend to shut down in that situation. Like if I know you're not listening to me, how open am I going to be? And so there's something beautiful about being willing to take the thing where it is. I mean, we could all sit around and grouse about how much we miss playing with people in three dimensions, with an audience also there in three dimensions, and the quinoa salad also, of course. But yeah, I guess we're figuring it out. Do you before we do our little wrap up and play one last clip, Erica and DeWitt, do you have any any parting thoughts whether wise philosophical words or shameless self-promotion or anything else.
Well, I think that in light of just the challenges that we're all facing right now, being musicians and obviously being teachers, I mean, Henry, like, hats off to you and others in your position who have to, like, your job right now is to be inspiring to young people. And when you are, I'm sure, have days where you feel less inspired yourself, to have to pull that out and bring it out there, it's just like, it's a feat that is, you know, unsurpassed. So my hat goes off to you and teachers like you. I think to kind of get through these times, you have to have some humor. I think what's one of the things that DeWitt and I love about our collaboration is, like, we can be funny on stage. We can smile and dance around and just be just goofy. And not only does that make us feel good on the bandstand, it adds to the connection with the band, but it also adds to the connection with the audience. I find in the jazz world, we can be very much in our heads when we're performing. And that's not a bad thing when you're thinking about the theory and the harmony and the technique of your instrument. Like, you know, you get in your own head, and that's there's a place for that. But I think I've had a conversation with a young student today who actually called me and was asking me about this exact thing, being funny on the bandstand, having humor. I think that is something that is really important in general, you know, especially right now. And I think that's one of the things that makes the collaboration between me and DeWitt so special, is we can just be funny and be ourselves. And I think that's something we can't ignore as jazz musicians who play a very intellectual music.
Yes, ditto. Yes, what Erica said. Also, I'm always excited to bring tap and jazz back together, in a more collaborative way. Because a lot of times, like I said, you see it as a presentation and not as actually a part of the band. And there's other people out there doing it too, which is really refreshing to see. So it's just, you know, exciting being able to collaborate, you know, with you, Noah and Henry. There's a lot of fun hearing what you guys are, you know, doing, and it was really fun for us. It was frustrating because, you know, I feed off of the energy of people, and, you know, and so that was hard. Just kind of trying to, like Erica said, get out of your head. That was hard for me because it was just me in my living room trying to record. But it was fun. It was fun, and, you know, thanks for having us. And yeah, we really enjoyed it. And Erica, did you say something about your book, Erica? About the book that you have?
I have not yet said anything about my book called A Cool Approach to Jazz Theory.
Yes, I have a copy.
See, I should grab one and hold it up so you could see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Speaking of, like, humor and how to convey something complicated to an audience, I have a music theory book out for middle and high school jazz kids who are starting to delve into the world of music theory, chord harmony. It's not just for kids. Adults love this book too. It's called A Cool Approach to Jazz Theory. And it's something worth checking out for teachers, students, or if you're dabbling in jazz and just want to get better at reading chords. There's a great character called Ollie the Jazz Cat that walks you through the basics of jazz harmony. And I'm talking basics. Like, you're really going to know what chord symbols mean and everything after this book. And you can get it at bookbaby.com or my website, ericavonkleist.com. And DeWitt, I see you got a you have a copy of our album behind you called Intersplosion Live at Dizzy's. That's the album. You can get it. You can go to our website, saxandtaps.com, and check out all of our stuff and read about us and all the links that we have to our cool stuff. And then DeWitt, tell people about your Be Heard tap, your tap mic project, and Be Heard and all of that amazing stuff you're doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been performing for a while, and one of the consistent things that I've always ran into was that no one was ever prepared for me. And so I've always, it affects your performance, and a lot of times I could never be heard on stage, or, it was like, oh, you look good, but we couldn't hear you. And so I was able to come up with a pair of mics that are specifically for tap dancing. And that way, when we show up to a gig, we can just go to the sound engineer or the sound person working and just say, hey, I brought my own mics. Just plug me into the system and we're ready to go. And it's really been a huge thing for me. I mean, I used it for the album. We recorded with the mics and it just makes my life a lot easier and the sound guy's life a lot easier. And then, he actually ends up liking me a little better because I made his job a little easier. So yeah, it's the Do It Right Tap mics. And you can find all this information on saxandtaps.com because we have different links to my website, DeWittFlemingJr.com, EricaVonKleist.com, and you can find out all the different things we're doing. And the Be Heard is, at first it was about being heard with tap, and then as, things happen, you just say, okay, we just need to be heard in general. Some people, we don't listen to each other enough, and as a result, we don't speak up enough. So be heard is just a kind of thing that I always wear my hat just to remind people, be heard, speak up, say something, and be human. Be heard and be human. So yeah, that's that.
Thank you, guys. And I, as a fellow recording artist and instructional book author, I endorse both this album and Erica's wonderful theory book. I'm not a tap dancer, so I can only imagine how awesome your tap mics are. And seems like there's not a lot of competition out there, which is why you had to innovate and do that. Thank you. So if this were really the end of an in-person jazz up close as opposed to a from afar jazz up close, then a few things would be happening. I would be telling you to mark your calendars for the next one, which I will, with Nicole Zoritis and Dan Pugach on December 5th, also a Saturday afternoon. And I would be reminding you that we've got the Punch Bowl in the corner. If you have any cash left over after you have bought their album, which you now know how to do, you can go to saxandtaps.com, and you want to help subsidize the Jazz Up Close program moving forward, you can instead do this by going to resonantmotion.org and going to the donate page there. And I would also point out that that you don't have to do that, because thanks to, once again, the generosity of Resonant Motion's donors and the Middletown Commission on the Arts and the Friends of the Russell Library, who collectively have made it possible for us to endure this and continue to have this program this year. And then DeWitt and Erica would be blushing from the thunderous and endless applause from all of you. So thank you, Henry Lugo, and thank you, DeWitt Fleming Jr., and thank you, Erica von Kleist.
And thank you, Noah, for spearheading this wonderful series despite the challenges and making it as awesome as it would have been in person. So thank you for having us. This is really a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you to the Russell Library for hosting us, even if not in 3 dimensions. And we're going to send you out with a really fun, appropriately enough, fun and humor-filled, yet not insubstantial. I love the how you guys embody the way you can infuse humor into music, and that doesn't dumb it down in any way. It doesn't take away from the substance and the transcendence in it. It's just another valid mood in music that maintains its rigor. Do you want to give a quick intro to the tune we're gonna go out with? This is the charity event performance of Piggy Bank in Whitefish, Montana. Is that all they need to know?
Yeah, this is another tune that DeWitt and I wrote together. We actually sat on my couch here in Whitefish and like hacked it out, just sort of like wait, should we go this way? And we put this together, and we had so much fun filming this video. Oh my god, it was a blast.
You gotta tell the story behind it though. It's based on Piggy Bank for Charity is based on the Jewish tradition called tzedakah, where you give where you save your money in the piggy bank to give away to someone in need. And so as you listen to the song, it's supposed to mimic someone taking money and drop it into a piggy bank over and over again until it fills up, and then they give it away to the person in need. So.
And in the video, we're sort of metaphorically dropping our change in the proverbial musical piggy bank of Whitefish, Montana. We filmed this in almost all the bars and restaurants and up on the mountain, and it was very cold up there. My saxophone wasn't happy after doing that, but it was worth it.
Awesome. So thank you, everybody, and we're going to go out with Piggy Bank for Charity.
Mm-hmm.